1:38 in the morning here. Yesterday was a very trying day. Most days are. I got like 3 people, I guess, that I sort of hang out with in town. The one I enjoy going to see the most is the one who's sober. Don't get me wrong, he drinks upon occasion, but I've never seen him drunk. I'm not sure if he's ever been drunk, but I don't want to ask him. There are more important things, you know. Sure, you might tell me a story about when you got completely shit-faced at 23, and that's the reason that you don't drink anymore, or something like that. But really, it's more of a me and him have actual conversations. Whereas a lot of people, they're just drunk. They don't want nothing to do with me until they're drunk. And then when they're drunk and don't have anybody to hang out with, they call me up and, "Hey Sean, what are you doing?" "Working on my case and trying to get help." I don't really like hanging out with drunk people because they get on repeat. There's a difference between being on repeat because you're drunk and you can't hear anything that somebody else is saying, and being on repeat because you're having to deal with drunks who aren't hearing you. Most of the people that I had offer to help me are alcoholics. A lot of people have great ideas that I should do things that I've already done or try things that I've already done. You know, when Natalie first disappeared, there were a lot of people that wanted to help me. But it was, well, a situation with Candace Bonder on where she literally is the worst friend that I have ever had, bar none. There is no worse friend that you could ask for than Candace Bondurant. See, here's the problem with Candace, is that Candace did some fucked up shit. And then, of course, she wanted me to take the punishment for it. She wanted me to take the punishment for her decisions. She wanted me to take the punishment for the police's decisions. She wanted me to take the punishment. I was trying to do the right thing. Nobody should have been fucking punished in that. But of course, when Candace was an overwhelming fucking cunt, I let her know she was an overwhelming cunt. And she took advantage of the fact that I was on a Facebook ban to slander the shit out of my name and prevent me from defending myself. Something that people have done since the very beginning. There's a reason that I take it to Facebook. The reason I take it to Facebook is because most of y'all don't give a fuck about anybody but yourselves. But you expect everybody to serve you hand and fucking foot. I owe you because of your skin color? Like hell. I don't know any black people who have been beaten up as many times as I have for the color of their skin. And there isn't a goddamn chance in hell that I'm going to pretend that only women have to deal with sexual abuse, sexual assault, and being molested. Now, as far as tonight goes, yeah, the guy that I was hanging out with was pretty drunk. He only really wants to be social when he's drunk. And then he's on repeat. Did I mention he's on repeat? It's because he's on repeat. Did I mention that he's repeating himself? He repeats himself in different ways and thinks that he's saying something different, or like I didn't get the first time that he repeated himself, that he's repeating himself, which is pretty common among alcoholics, which is why it's a good thing that I don't drink. It's also why I am more credible than they are. And that sucks. It sucks to need somebody's help when they're fucking drunk. You can tell who the most pampered people are in America because they're the ones who talk about doing it all themselves. Bullshit. We don't live on a planet of one. What Natalie and her family have done, well, they should be in prison for it. But then again, so should the police officers who didn't do their jobs. They want to call me mentally ill, but don't want to do anything to observe my rights as a disabled person. See, the term isn't mentally ill, it's mentally disabled. The term mentally ill is too broad, and it is literally used as propaganda to manipulate you, the public, into doing things that are against your best interest. Today I was supposed to call a lady. Her daughter was stolen, and I should have called her, and I didn't. I figured I'd run around, take care of my errands. When I was done with them, then I would have time for it. But by the time I was done with my errands, I was in excruciating pain. It gave me sleep last night, so I finally passed out for a few hours. It's terrible that we're ignoring the crimes against literally thousands of people in the United States just because they don't happen to be the right color for the propaganda that is being thrown at us today. Oh no, the police would never, ever do that to a homeless person. The police would never, ever do that to a white person. The police would never, ever do that to a dude. Holy fuck. Most of the black folks that I've seen in my life, most of them who have claimed they were racially targeted were not. Most of the black folks that I know in houses, just like most of the white folks I know in houses, if they go to jail, they probably committed the fucking crime. If you're homeless, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. In jail, whether there was a crime committed or not. Now, I've had people send me stuff, which is nice. It doesn't give me a sober friend in person, and it doesn't give me the help that I need. See, the first thing that the police did after Natalie disappeared is go out of their way to make sure that I would spend the rest of my life being victimized. Going out of their way to make sure that that evidence wasn't seen, and they had a lot of help. Help from the general public who was getting onto my Facebook, calling literally everything spam, trying to get me permanently put on a Facebook ban, trying to destroy evidence that I was telling the truth and still am. Darren O'Connor, his excuse was that it was just too complicated. Well, it wouldn't have been too complicated if you'd have kept your word, Darren O'Connor. But then again, I don't matter, do I? Because I'm not black. You claim to care about the homeless, but then you brush the homeless under the rug because it doesn't fit what you want as a win. Your prestige, Darren O'Connor, is what's the most important to you. You're playing on a ticket that you don't belong on, Darren O'Connor. You have stabbed the homeless in the back too many times for me to believe your bullshit. Meanwhile, it's okay to victimize me for my disabilities. Most of my disabilities are your bad assumptions. Now, don't get me wrong. Where a lot of you guys are pissed off, saying, you know, Sean, you should have done it like this, you should have done it like that. Oh, I understand why you have that opinion. It's because you either A, just picked it up, just picked up this case and this story, which recently has been the case. A lot of people picked up this story because of Rob Gavigan. But the thing is that the help that I need is in person. I need someone to go in with me and fight for my rights so that I don't get brushed off, so that I don't get told one thing in one place and another thing in another, or two completely different stories from the same exact person. I mean, you can hear from Sheriff Scott DaCosta in this town and our conversations that were here on YouTube. You can hear in those conversations where he says that I should have brought that situation with Cody Selhorst to him. Except what happened when I brought that to him? He had me committed. Meanwhile, Jen Beebe doesn't give two fucking shits about me. She cares about the sliding fee fucking scale. If you work with human beings, especially disabled human beings, and you're just there to collect a goddamn paycheck, you're shit. Complete shit. And of course, we got that problem with who? CPS and the police doing that shit. Taking away people's parental rights. Meanwhile, there's a guy at the other end of town. Most of the winter, he just pretty much fucked around, got drunk, and played video games. Now, is he drunk every single day? No. But despite the fact that that's what he did, when shit happened with his kids, he got all the help he needed. Help that I wouldn't have received in a million fucking years. And why is that? Because he's got family who actually cares about him. They're not going to turn a fucking blind eye to that shit. That house that I was going to buy, this man lives in. Do you know why he lives in it? Well, for starters, because I was being victimized for crimes that I didn't commit. And that victimization took a heavy toll financially, as well as taking a heavy toll on where I was allowed to be as a physical location. Being assaulted by Waylon Lolatai, an officer with a history of assaulting people, both before and after me, prevented me from leaving the state of Colorado, prevented me from renewing my lease, prevented me from doing all of the things that I needed to do to have a safe environment. This environment here isn't safe. This is exactly what I would have needed when Natalie died. Before all of this other shit happened, I was made homeless. And the homeless are your victim pool. Those are the people that you, the American public, hate the most, regardless of your goddamn skin color. Y'all just hate poverty. You hate broke people. You make every excuse why it is okay for you to victimize homeless people yourself. You have no idea how many black college kids I saw go down there in Boulder, Colorado and bum bash. You got no idea how many situations like that where the difference between somebody getting assaulted or being shot pretty much came down to whether or not I was willing to get involved. See, when it happens to somebody else, you say, oh, mind your own business, mind your own business, mind your own business. But then when it happens to you, you want fucking help, don't you? Goddamn right you do. But you don't want the people that you have an issue with to be able to defend themselves. You just want your words to be allowed. And that's the thing that happened in every single one of my court dates. I was never allowed to speak. Did you know that? I was never allowed to show evidence. I was never allowed to face my accusers. And my public pretenders did more harm than the police did themselves. And do you know why that is? Because they didn't give a fuck. They're taking the money for a job they're not doing. So I'm in extreme pain right now. I had somebody give me a back massage. It felt more like, well, it was hurt. It was just a whole bunch of hurt. So now I just have a whole bunch of sore from that hurt. Plus, I still have back problems. But also, the amount of pain that I just went through made my back kind of numb. That means I might be able to get to sleep again. But it's no guarantee. A lot of people want to pretend that I'm racist, want to pretend that I'm saying what's happening to these black folks is okay. No, it's not okay. But at the same time, if the police are doing it to the homeless, regardless of skin color, and they're doing it to physically and mentally disabled people, regardless of color, what are the chances that you were targeted for homelessness or for your disabilities? They're pretty fucking high. See, BLM wants to spout out about how 21% of those incarcerated in the United States are black. That depends on where you are regionally. Here in Chapel, Nebraska, yeah, probably not. Of course, you go to Washington, D.C., and you're looking at 60 to 80%, depending on the year. But homeless people, they stay pretty fucking steady. About 81%. Boulder, they like to pride themselves on having a 90% capacity. Then again, Boulder, just like anywhere else in America, is run by rich people who don't have to go through our struggles. And we don't have to go through those struggles either. We can kill ourselves. Our troubles are all over. Any fucking idiot can see that the Ball and your family are a bunch of pieces of shit. And anybody who's willing to open their fucking eyes can tell that, well, the homeless are getting it a lot worse. How many of those black folks that were incarcerated, how many of them were homeless when they were incarcerated? How many were homeless when they were arrested? Nearly all of them. Nearly all of them. What are the chances that they were targeted for being homeless? And let's take a look at this right now. The homeless account for less than 0.2% of the population, yet they account for 81% of those incarcerated. %. Imagine if 81% of people in houses were targeted like that. And then y'all want to pretend that police protocol is racist. Like they don't do these things to other people. Like their largest victim pool, the homeless. You want to pretend that those victims don't exist because it doesn't fit your racist propaganda. You tell the other victims to go shut up. get to the back of the bus. Oh, you have no right to complain. You're not black. You're not black. You shouldn't have anything to fucking complain about. You're white. You're so fucking spoiled because you're white. Bitch, let me explain something to you. Out of the 5 categories of the most victimized people in America, I fit 4 of them. Just not the number 1 on the list, because the number 1 on the list is foster children. And I haven't been a foster child in over 2 decades. I'm glad for the things that people have done for me. But without them speaking out, it didn't make any difference. It didn't matter that I spent literally thousands of hours collecting evidence and made literally thousands of phone calls to different agencies. None of that mattered, because the term mentally ill means you have no rights. You are not a human being. Now, let's say we round that 81% down to 80. 80%. The majority of the black folks that I was in jail with, probably 8 out of 10 or more, were homeless when they were arrested. So let's put that in perspective. Let's say out of 100 people, 21 of them, that's what a percentage is. It's based off of numerical 100. So if there's 100 people and 21% of them are black, that means 21 of them are black. 21. Now what's 80% of 21? Somebody just sent me a message and then retracted it. That always weirds me out. Usually it's an insult or a threat, but in this case it wasn't, which is why it's weird that it was retracted. Morning, Bill Oth. So 80% of 10 is what? 8. So 80% of 20 would be what? 16. So that means that statistically, if the averages are the same, which they're not, by the way, black homeless people are victimized even more than I am by the police. Black homeless people are a lot easier to victimize, especially if they have what you can call a mental illness. Being fed up is apparently a mental illness in the United States. Defending yourself against predators is apparently a mental illness in the United States. It's fucking ludicrous. Now, the fact is, if you're a homeless black man, yes, you are going to be railroaded more than the rest of the homeless. I'm not going to pretend that race has no factor in it whatsoever. But I'm also not going to pretend that all of these black folks who are targeted for being homeless or for looking like they might be homeless, I'm not going to pretend that they were targeted for the color of their skin. I'm not going to pretend that homelessness had nothing to do with it. You have no idea how many black folks I knew in Boulder that were homeless. That they would come up to me and start complaining about how they were racially profiled. And then they start listing off their reasons why they were racially profiled. And it turns out that all of the stuff that they're bitching about is stuff that homeless in general have to deal with. But you have been trained, of course, those black people in Boulder who want to go spouting that ignorant bullshit, you see this happening to white people, innocent white people who happen to be homeless all the time. But you think that when it happens to you, it's because of your skin color. No, 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 no. You were targeted for the same reason that those white folks were targeted, because they were fucking homeless. Now, is there a higher percentage? Yes, there is. Higher percentage for what? That's the question right there. And are we ignoring other victims in order to sell our rhetoric or our propaganda? Am I ignoring black people through this? Fuck no. Hell no. I am fighting for human rights. So if I'm fighting for human rights, then black people are human, are they not? Are they not? See, I don't want black people getting treated like homeless. I don't. I don't want any of y'all getting treated like you're homeless. But then again, I absolutely do. 100%. Why such contrast? Because your decisions on who it's okay to victimize are based on bias of things that you don't know shit about. A lot of those black folks who were pissed off that they were racially profiled, and then they start bitching. Literally, all the stuff they're bitching about is stuff that the homeless have to deal with. The homeless in specific. When the city council makes laws that are specifically made to target the homeless people, and the police take part in it, like let's talk about the cigarette law in Colorado. I have literally seen police officers watch people smoking cigarettes where it's illegal and do nothing about it until a homeless person goes there. Behind the Cheesecake Factory is in the red zone for no smoking. And the employees that work at the Cheesecake Factory can have their cigarettes back there whenever they want it, despite the fact that it is illegal. Well, with the exception of Hispanic folks who work there. They still got targeted by the police. They didn't get targeted as if they were homeless, but they were still targeted. I'm not going to pretend that racism doesn't exist, but not every single thing that happens to you is because people are racist. Right now, being black is a pampered card. Oh, they did it to me because I'm black. You gotta feel bad for me. Gotta feel bad. Gotta feel bad. Gotta feel bad. I feel bad for Ventus. Ventus was targeted for the color of his skin. They weren't even after an American. They were after a white Ukrainian, and they broke into Ventus's apartment. Tried to do the same thing to him that was done to me. He had his wrist all wrapped up for the same reason that mine was. Cops did the same thing to him they did to me. But I was targeted for different reasons than Ventus was. Ventus was targeted for a different reason that Zaid Atkinson was. They were also targeted in different locations. In Boulder, Colorado, fuck yeah, they want to maintain this clean thing. We're a clean city. We're liberal, and we love everybody but the homeless, obviously. Meanwhile, we have a higher rate of addiction among people in houses than we do on the streets. Figure that one out. Bill Oz typed, hang in there, Sean. Love your videos, man. Thank you. Just so you know, not all of my videos are nice. Some of them I curse in. Some of them I am openly and blatantly racist in. Why is that? If I don't believe in this racism? Because I do believe in fair and equal treatment. If a man forces his penis into a woman, well, I do personally believe that that woman should have the right to shove things into that man. The only thing is that that wouldn't be equality because she's not going to have an orgasm from shoving something up a dude's ass. If she does, there's some severe fucking problems with her too, which could possibly be the case if you're a victim of rape. When it comes to treating people equally, no, I'm not going to go do the things that were done to me. but I'm going to say the things that you say to me. When I read more than 10 comments in the morning about how these people who claim that they're Christians, love and light and Jesus and all this bullshit, first thing in the morning, I'm waking up to them saying that we should nuke all of these Muslim countries. Yeah, then what do? I get on here and I make a live video where I say the United States should be nuked. Why do I say the United States instead of Christians? Well, that depends on the situation. Sometimes treating Christians the way that they treat others will get you treated as if you are being an asshole just because they believe in God. Oh, absolutely not. You can believe in God. Go ahead. You're allowed to have a penis or a vagina too. But that doesn't mean you get to go shoving those things in people's faces and treating them like shit because they're not interested. If I'm not interested in your vagina, I'm not interested. Plain and simple. If a whole bunch of black folks want to get on and be racist assholes, I will target those black folks in specific. But we're not talking about black people doing these things. We're talking about BLM, a racially motivated hate group. BLM is not black people. Get that fucking shit right out of your head right fucking now. BLM is not black people. There are lots of white people who support BLM. That doesn't make them any less racist. If you're targeted because of poverty and you pretend that you are targeted for the color of your skin so that you can get an easy win by playing bias in public opinion, you're as wrong as the police officers who wronged you. You're turning a blind eye to all of the other victims. Meanwhile, many of the people that claimed that they would help me ended up being predators. They were predatory from the start, but I was desperate and needed help, and the police were going out of their way to do everything in their power not to do their goddamn jobs, not to do the jobs that we're paying them for. Meanwhile, most of the things that these officers said that they couldn't do, these very officers did those things for my predators. The difference is that for me, I just wanted to make a report and get a day in court. For my predators, they didn't want me being allowed in court. They didn't want me to be allowed to show evidence. They didn't want me to be allowed to defend myself. And they did everything in their power to prevent me from being allowed to defend myself or from showing the truth before it got so incredibly goddamn complicated. Like, it would have been nice if right after Natalie died, if I could have just sat down, taken screenshots of everything, and posted it all up at once. I mean, hell, that would have been the optimal time to do it. The problem is I needed help doing that. I needed a place where I could sit and do it, and I needed someone to show me how to do those things. To this day, nobody showed me how to do 90% of this shit. I get over there to where they say, hey, Sean, come here, I'll help you. And I get there and they're a fucking drunk. Or they're a fucking junkie. And I know a lot of y'all don't like to hear those words. I should say addict. Well, I've noticed that the difference between a junkie and an addict tends to come down to looks. And if ugly people or non-physically attractive people get called junkies, then those of you who are pretty and addicts are going to get equal treatment. equal. You're not an addict to me just because you're pretty. And these other folks are not junkies to me just because they're not. But you notice that those words are different, don't you? You use different words for pretty people than you do for people who aren't. I'm not going to pretend for one moment that Zaid Atkinson was not targeted for the way that he looked. But it's not his skin color he was targeted for. He was targeted for having dreads and for having dirty fucking clothes in Boulder, Colorado. And Zaid Atkinson, when I first saw him on that video, I went, holy shit, that dude looks homeless. That dude seriously looks like almost every homeless person. Do they all dress the same? Do they all have dreads? No, they don't. That's what makes Zaid Atkinson different than the other predators or the other victims. That Zaid Atkinson, first of all, he was not targeted for the color of his skin. Now, there are people who were. Brian Townsend had to deal with racism at the Super 8 motel in Longmont. Why did they choose to be predatory towards Brian? Because he's black. Now then there's Ventus Kosari, or Ventus Kosai, not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, another black man, also targeted for the color of his skin. When it comes to Boulder police, I know my shit. When it comes to the disabled, I know my shit. When it comes to how police treat human beings in Boulder, Colorado, I know my shit. That's the difference between 90% of the people who are posting on this shit. The difference is I have firsthand experience, not just in that state, but in that specific county, in that specific city, with those specific officers. Meanwhile, if you put Officer Smiley on the stand, he's probably a little bit pissed off at Boulder because in his mind, he was doing his job. In his mind, he was hunting hobos like a good piggy. And it's not his fault that the guy that he picked out to victimize as a homeless person had a house. But if you were to ask Officer Smiley today, did you target that man for the color of his skin? He would probably explain to you that he thought Zaid Atkinson was homeless, and this is standard procedure for how to treat the homeless. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, it's immoral, but nobody fucking cares. Not until they do it to somebody in a house. They do shit like that to Swan. Well, Mark Swanigan is a black homeless person. They do that shit to Brian Townsend. Well, Brian Townsend is a black homeless person. Violoff typed, I gotta say, man, the sheer amount of insight you have on current issues in the States right now is impeccable. It's good to see that some people still have a reliable rationale. Problem is that I'm dealing with courts and cops who don't have a reliable rationale. It's difficult having to deal with a lot of addicts, but I dealt with those addicts because they're human beings, because I still care about them. When I rescued Desiree, I knew that there was a chance that she might steal all my shit. I knew that years ago when Matt Worley decided that he was going to steal his mother's tools because, well, she was a welder, among other things. They did dirt track racing. Matt Worley, he got strung out on meth, stole her tools, and sold them for meth. Well, there was a moral to that story, but the moment my back is starting to become less numb than it was, it's starting to hurt, and I'm thinking more on that than the topic at hand. So I think I'm going to lay down on the floor. If I lay down on the floor and put my feet up on the chair, put a pillow under my neck, kind of arches my back into a little bit better position. For me, bending over is not an issue. It's standing back up afterwards. It's excruciating. The police didn't just prey on my mental disabilities or my mental state. They also preyed on my physical disabilities, like my back being screwed up. And when I was assaulted in the Longmont Hospital, Officer Burke walked around checking pressure points, visually agitated that they weren't working. Well, I'm autistic, asshole. I have a very high pain threshold. It wasn't until he found the knee that was fucked up by Waylon Lolatai and dug his fingers into it. Holy shit, that's fucked up. But then again, I don't have a right to defend myself because I'm not black. I don't have a right to defend myself. Well, that's stupid. There are plenty of black folks out there that are not racist. There are plenty of black folks out there who are not blaming all white people for police brutality. And there are lots of black folks out there who are not pretending that this only happens to black people. Shit, we can't even get a lot of upper middle class white kids to admit that because it's a popular thing. Popularity, it's popular. Pop, 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 pop. Now, a lot of people call me racist for saying that Zaid Atkinson was not targeted for the color of his skin. And then they show their bias by pretending that I'm trying to justify the wrong things that those cops did. No, it's just as wrong when those cops do it to the homeless. And when they do it to the homeless, it's worse. Zaid Atkinson did not have the police try to break his wrist, and he didn't have them try to scrape half of his face off on the cement. He wasn't forced into a situation where he couldn't breathe and had an officer trying to break his arm behind his back and then call up to have an EMT come administer drugs to him when he's dead, like they did to that man in Texas. That man was already dead when that EMT put those drugs into that man at the request of officers. First of all, you're not a fucking doctor. Those drugs very well could have an adverse reaction with whatever was in his system and fucking kill him dead as a doornail. By the way, that's the same thing that I spoke out about that was done to me. Done to me. Having those drugs forced into me because police are apparently ordained as doctors now. Having a badge in 6 weeks of school makes you qualified to be a doctor and decide when it's okay to drug people. Unfortunately, most of those being drugged is because they're speaking out. The police know what they did is wrong. They know that it's illegal. And they know that the best way to get away with it is to discredit those people by locking them up in an institution and having nurses inject drugs into them. Oh, look at him. He's mentally ill. You know, he was in an institution and they had to drug him. And fuck you. All you had to do was take my goddamn police report, bitch. Anyway, y'all have a nice day. Yes, I'm still fighting for black rights. Why? Because those are my rights. My rights under the United States Constitution. Same as theirs, same as yours, unless you live outside of the United States. Unfortunately, if you live outside of the United States, you are probably better educated on the United States, current events in the United States, and how the United States government works. Why? Because that's the statistics. Americans know less about the American government than most Europeans. Americans know the names of less of our politicians than most Europeans. That's only one of the reasons that this is not a democracy. In order for it to be a democracy, the American public would have to be educated. Without education, it is not a democracy. It's a republic or a dictatorship.